The first thing Clara Wren noticed after becoming Luna of Blackmoor was how quickly a wedding could stop feeling like a wedding. Only minutes earlier, the great hall had thundered with applause as Alpha King Ronan Blackmoor slid a silver wedding band onto her finger beneath the carved wolves of the Northern Crown. Now armed riders waited beyond the doors, snow spinning around their horses while a messenger stood breathless at the foot of the dais. A clash between two border packs had turned violent. Ronan had to leave. He crossed the hall toward Clara. At 24, she had imagined many versions of a political marriage. None had included a husband who looked more dangerous when quiet than most men did with a weapon in hand. Ronan was tall, broad-shouldered, black-haired, with silver eyes that seemed to miss very little. His gaze dropped to the untouched plate beside her seat. "You haven't eaten." Clara glanced toward the musicians preparing for the feast. "Neither have you." "I'll survive." That is a very kingly answer. Something almost like amusement touched his eyes. He motioned to a servant. "Keep her supper warm." The small gesture surprised her. All day, nobles had spoken around her, dressed her, positioned her, and reminded her who outranked whom. Ronan was the first person to notice she was hungry. He fastened his traveling cloak and lowered his voice. "Save me one dance." Clara looked toward the crowded floor. "Only one?" "One no one else gets." Before she could decide whether he was teasing, Ronan turned toward the doors. A moment later, he was gone into the storm. The warmth he left behind did not last. Wine was poured. Music began again. Clara had barely taken her first bite when Lady Seraphine Voss rose from the council table. Conversation softened immediately. "Before our new Luna joins the wedding feast," Seraphine said, "one tradition remains." Royal Chancellor Garrick Dane stepped forward, carrying a parchment sealed with black wax. "The first winter rite, Your Majesty." Clara set down her fork. "I was told the ceremony was complete." "The marriage is complete," Seraphine replied. "The welcome is not." Garrick opened the parchment. At the bottom rested Ronan's royal seal. Clara stood. "Did the king approve this?" Garrick angled the decree toward her. Beneath the final line was Ronan's signature. His Majesty restored the right himself. A colder feeling than winter moved through her. Seraphine stopped before Clara and reached for the white fur mantle around her shoulders. "Every Luna of the North must show she can endure what her people endure." Clara touched the mantle instinctively. It had been presented to her that morning as part of the royal ceremony. Seraphine smiled faintly. "Warmth belongs to a Luna, after she proves she can endure without it." She unclasped it. The entire hall watched the fur slide from Clara's shoulders, leaving only her thin, ivory wedding gown. Someone near the eastern tables laughed under his breath. Another noble raised his cup. Clara looked toward the doors Ronan had disappeared through. She could refuse. She could demand that someone ride after him. She could turn this into a scandal before her first evening, as his wife had even begun. Then an old lesson whispered from a part of herself she wished she had outgrown. Do not make yourself difficult to keep. After her father died, Clara had learned how quickly a household could make room for a quiet girl, and how quickly that room disappeared when she needed too much. She had learned to apologize before asking, and smile before objecting. Ronan had known her for less than a day. His signature was on the parchment. She lifted her chin. "What am I required to do?" A silver bowl was carried into the center of the hall. One by one, the leaders of the northern packs approached it. Each received a small silver disc stamped with a wolf's head. "The winter tokens," Seraphine said. "Each pack bears witness to the Luna entering her trial." The first Alpha dropped his token into the bowl. Clink. The second followed. Clink. Clara stood beside Ronan's empty place while leader after leader crossed before her. Some looked amused. some solemn. One older alpha hesitated, met her eyes, then released his token anyway. Clink. A young woman at the back looked horrified but said nothing. The sound became worse than laughter. It meant they all knew. When the last token fell, servants opened the enormous oak doors. Wind rushed into the hall, bending the candle flames. Beyond the threshold, the courtyard was already white. Clara stared at the snow. How long? Seraphine's expression remained serene. Until the rite is complete. It was not an answer. Clara looked once more at Ronan's signature. Then she stepped outside. Snow caught in her hair. Cold passed through her wedding shoes before she reached the first stone step. Behind her, Seraphine lifted a crystal glass. To a Luna strong enough to earn her way back through the door. Several voices answered the toast. The oak doors closed. For one hopeful second, Clara remained facing them. Then she heard the iron bar slide into place from inside. Music returned first, muffled through wood and stained glass. Then came laughter. Golden silhouettes moved behind the windows while Clara stood alone beneath the falling snow. She wrapped her arms around herself. Perhaps it would only be a little while. Perhaps the doors would open before the cold became dangerous. Ronan had signed it. There had to be something she did not understand. So she waited. Snow gathered on her sleeves. The wind sharpened. Feeling began to fade from her fingertips. Twice she approached the doors, and twice the thought of pounding against them stopped her. Do not be difficult to keep. Clara closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe slowly. Then, beneath the wind, she heard something else. A tiny sound from the dark hedge beyond the courtyard. A whimper. Clara opened her eyes. It came again, weaker this time. She looked at the glowing windows behind her, then toward the snow-covered hedge. Staying beside the doors was safer. She knew that. Clara stepped away from them anyway. The whimper came from beyond the hedge, thin and uneven beneath the wind. Clara moved toward it before she could talk herself out of going. Snow had already climbed over her wedding shoes, soaking the satin and numbing her toes. The farther she moved from the great doors, the weaker the light from the stained glass windows became. "Where are you?" she whispered. Another small cry answered near the stone wall. Clara pushed between two snow-heavy branches and found a shallow hollow beside the hedge. A white wolf pup lay trapped beneath a broken limb, its fur nearly disappearing against the snow. One golden eye stared up at her. The other was clouded and scarred shut. Its front paw was pinned beneath frozen wood. "Oh, sweetheart." The pup tried to pull away and gave a breathless yelp. Clara glanced back. The doors were no longer visible from where she crouched. Only distant squares of golden glass marked the hall. If someone opened the doors now, they might not see her. She should go back. The wolf whimpered again. Clara knelt. "Fine," she murmured. "We can both make terrible decisions tonight." She pulled off one glove and wedged her fingers beneath the branch. The bark was rough with ice. She lifted once and failed. The second attempt tore skin across her palm. Pain flashed through her hand, but the branch shifted. "Come on." The pup dragged its paw free and collapsed against her knee. Blood ran across Clara's palm. She ignored it and checked the small leg instead. The paw was swollen but did not seem broken. She tore a narrow strip from the inner lining of her gown, wrapped the abrasion, then tucked the wolf beneath the loose folds of ivory fabric against her chest. The pup trembled so violently its teeth clicked. "I know," Clara whispered. "I'm cold too." She tried to stand and nearly fell. That frightened her more than the cut. The music and wind had blurred time, and snow was already filling the footprints behind her. Something hard pressed beneath the pup's fur. Clara reached under its neck and found an old iron tag hanging from a thin leather cord. The metal was dark with age. but beneath the frost she could make out a wolf's head beneath a crown. Blackmoor, where did you get this? A drop of blood slid from her palm and struck the ice beside them. Silver light moved beneath the frozen surface. Clara went still. For one impossible second, thin lines appeared inside the ice like writing trapped below glass. The queen. Then they vanished. Clara stared at the spot. Cold did strange things to the mind. Confusion, sleepiness, seeing things that were not there. She pressed her bleeding hand against her dress and forced herself to breathe. For a moment she thought of Ronan noticing her untouched supper, of the quiet promise of a dance when he returned. That man had seemed careful with small things. She could not make him fit with the locked door behind her, yet his signature remained impossible to forget. Inside Blackmoor Keep, the feast had grown louder. Near the western doors, a young servant peered through the narrow pane beside the frame. He could still make out the pale shape of Clara's gown near the hedge. She's still out there. The older steward beside him kept his eyes forward. Leave it. The servant reached for the iron bar. The steward caught his wrist. Chancellor Dane said no one breaks a sealed order. She's freezing, and the order carries the king's seal. Several nobles nearby had heard them. One woman lowered her eyes into her wine. Another man deliberately turned back toward the musicians. No one told him to open the door. Slowly, the servant released the handle. Outside, Clara tried to retrace her path. The snowfall had thickened enough that the courtyard seemed unfamiliar. She took 3 steps before her left leg failed to obey her properly. She sank onto the edge of a stone planter and curled around the wolf. I'm not dropping you, she promised. She tried to remember what she knew about cold exposure. Keep moving, protect the chest, stay awake. Moving was becoming difficult. Staying awake was worse. Far from Blackmoor Keep, Alpha King Ronan Blackmoor was still riding away from the castle when Frost suddenly raced across his wedding ring. His stallion shied beneath him. Ronan looked down at the silver band burning cold against his skin. He understood at once. Danger, Clara. He hauled the reins and turned the horse so sharply that snow sprayed beneath its hooves. The captain behind him stared. Your Majesty? Back to Blackmoor. Ronan drove his heels into the stallion, and the horse surged toward the castle. Back in the courtyard, Clara lowered her head against the stone wall. She could no longer feel the fingers of her injured hand. The little wolf shifted weakly against her heartbeat, and she forced her eyes open. Stay awake, she whispered. She was no longer sure whether she meant the wolf or herself. Across the mountains, Ronan was riding back, but Clara was getting colder, faster than he was coming. Clara had stopped feeling the cold in her feet. That frightened her more than the pain in her hand. She sat half-curled against the stone planter, the white wolf pup tucked beneath her gown against her chest. Snow had gathered across her hair and shoulders until the ivory fabric no longer looked like a wedding dress. Every breath came slower than the last. Stay awake, she whispered. The pup moved faintly. Clara tried to stand. Her left leg buckled, and she caught herself against the stone with her bleeding hand. Pain flashed through her palm. For 1 second, the sharpness helped. Then it faded too. Miles away, Ronan drove his stallion hard enough that the royal guard had begun to fall behind. The wedding ring remained rimmed in frost. His captain pulled alongside him. Your Majesty, if the bond is reacting, something at the keep may have triggered it. Ronan did not slow. What was scheduled after I left? The feast, the pack oaths, the first winter rite. Ronan's head turned sharply. They performed the rite without me? The captain hesitated. The council said it had been prepared for the Luna. That answer was wrong before Ronan even considered the timing. 2 years earlier, he had approved the restoration of the first winter rite as a symbolic ceremony. Bride and Alpha were meant to stand outside together beneath the first winter sky, then return to the hall side by side. 12 minutes. No more. What time did the feast begin? The captain gave him the hour. Ronan looked at the frost on his ring. If the council had performed the rite after he left, they had already violated the version he approved. If Clara had been kept outside longer than 12 minutes, someone had changed more than the ceremony. He kicked the stallion faster. Back at Blackmoor Keep, Clara dragged one knee beneath herself and tried again. This time she managed 2 steps. On the third, her vision blurred. She lowered herself beside the hedge before she fell and pulled the wolf closer. Its one golden eye opened briefly, then closed. The old iron tag at its neck pressed cold against her wrist. Clara stared toward the castle windows. The music continued behind them, muted by distance and snow. Inside the keep, the elderly royal archivist had begun asking a different question. A young servant had come to him, pale-faced, whispering that the new Luna had been outside since the feast began. The archivist crossed to the record chamber and pulled the copy of the first winter rite from its drawer. The restoration entry bore Ronan's seal. The implementation copy contained a different instruction. Until first light, the archivist reached for the older notation beneath it. 12 ceremonial minutes. Bride and Alpha together. He looked up sharply. Chancellor Garrick Dane entered moments later, summoned by a clerk. What is it? The archivist placed both documents on the table. These do not match. Garrick studied them without touching either page. Then we verify the copies before we accuse anyone of altering a royal order. The Luna is outside now. Then His Majesty must see both documents. Garrick's tone stayed measured. Until he does, we know only that the records conflict. It was a reasonable answer. That was what made the silence afterward feel worse. Outside, Clara no longer had enough strength to reach the doors. She tried to flex her injured fingers and could not. The wolf pup shifted weakly beneath her gown. Clara bent over it, protecting its head from the snow. Don't sleep. Her own eyes closed. She opened them again only because the iron tag gave a faint pulse of silver against her wrist. No words appeared this time. Only light. Far down the mountain road, a rider bearing Blackmoor colors appeared through the storm. Your Majesty. Ronan reined in just enough for the messenger to speak. The council reports the Luna is completing the first winter rite. Ronan's face went still. Until when? The messenger swallowed. Until dawn. Ronan did not move for one heartbeat. Then he asked, Who authorized that? The order carries your royal seal, Your Majesty. The words landed harder than the cold. Ronan knew exactly what he had signed. The rite required both of them. It lasted 12 minutes. He had never ordered Clara to stand outside alone, and he had never ordered anyone to keep her there until dawn. Yet someone inside Blackmoor Keep had enough authority to make an entire hall believe he had. Ronan looked toward the dark shape of the castle rising through the storm ahead. Behind its walls, Clara was still being punished under his name. He lowered his voice. The order I signed was 12 minutes, and I was supposed to be standing beside her. The captain said nothing. Ronan's silver eyes fixed on the gates. Someone inside that castle is using my seal against my wife. The gates began to open. The gates were still opening when Ronan drove his stallion through them. Stable hands scattered. Ronan dismounted before the horse fully stopped and crossed the inner yard toward the great hall. Frost still rimmed his wedding ring. Inside, music still played. That was the first thing that made his anger sharpen. The second was Clara's empty chair. The third was the silver bowl standing near the center of the hall, filled with winter tokens. Conversation died as Ronan entered. Snow clung to his black cloak. No one moved to greet him. His eyes swept once across the room and stopped on the white ceremonial mantle draped over the back of Seraphine Voss's chair. "Where is my wife?" Seraphine rose. "Your Majesty, Lady Clara is completing the first winter rite." Ronan looked at her. "The rite I signed lasts 12 minutes. Seraphine's expression barely changed. "The council understood the restoration to require. It requires the Alpha and his bride to stand together." Silence. Garrick Dane stepped forward, measured as ever. "There appears to be a discrepancy between the restored order and the implementation copy. The archivist has already begun." "How long has she been outside?" No one answered. Ronan's gaze moved across faces that suddenly found the floor interesting. "How long?" The second time, his voice was softer. A young servant near the western doors went pale. "Since sunset, Your Majesty?" Ronan went still. "Several hours." He looked again at Clara's mantle. Someone had removed the one thing meant to protect a royal bride from the northern cold. His eyes dropped to the winter tokens. Every silver disc represented a witness. Not one of them had opened the door. Ronan crossed the hall. Seraphine spoke behind him. "Your Majesty, if the ritual was implemented incorrectly, I assure you." He turned his head just enough to look at her. "Not now." Seraphine fell silent. Ronan reached the doors. The young servant hurried forward to lift the iron bar, hands shaking so badly that metal struck wood twice before the lock came free. Cold air crashed into the hall. Ronan stepped outside. The courtyard was nearly erased by snow. Then he found a broken trail of shallow footprints leading away from the entrance toward the hedge. His chest tightened. "Clara." No answer. He followed the prints. They disappeared beneath fresh snow several yards from the door, but a torn strip of ivory fabric caught on a low branch showed him the direction. Ronan pushed through the hedge. He saw the wolf first. A small white head rested against a woman's chest. Then Clara moved. Barely. She was half curled against a stone planter, wedding dress soaked through at the hem, hair covered in snow. One hand was pressed beneath the wolf pup. The other lay open against her skirt, blood dried dark across the palm. Ronan dropped to one knee. Clara. Her face was too pale. He pulled off one glove and touched 2 fingers to the side of her neck. A pulse. Slow but there. "Clara, look at me." Her eyelashes moved. Again. "Look at me." Her eyes finally opened. For several seconds, she stared without recognition. Then her gaze found his face. "Ronan? I'm here." Her lips trembled. He expected anger, a demand, a question about why his seal had been on the order that left her there. Instead, she tried to sit straighter. "I tried not to embarrass you." Something inside him went colder than the winter. He looked at the woman who had nearly frozen to death beneath his name, and understood that she was apologizing to him. Ronan leaned closer. "You were never the embarrassment." Her eyes searched his. He looked back toward the glowing windows of Blackmoor Keep, where shadows crowded behind the glass. They were. Clara's eyes closed again. Ronan unclasped his heavy royal cloak and wrapped it around her. Only then did he realize she held something beneath her gown. The white wolf pup stirred weakly. "One paw is hurt," Clara whispered. "You're barely conscious." It was trapped. Of course it had been. Ronan slid one arm beneath Clara's knees and the other behind her back, keeping the wolf secured between them. She tried to protest. "I can walk." "No." It came out sharper than he intended. Her eyes opened. Ronan corrected himself. "You don't have to." For the first time, Clara stopped fighting her own weight. He lifted her. The wolf gave a faint sound but remained pressed against her chest. When Ronan carried Clara back through the doors, the entire hall was waiting. No music played now. No one raised a glass. Snow melted from Ronan's boots as he crossed the same floor. Clara had been made to walk hours earlier. Her wet wedding dress hung beneath his cloak. Her injured hand rested against the wolf's white fur. Every pack leader who had dropped a winter token into the bowl had to watch her return in the Alpha King's arms. Ronan did not look at any of them. He was almost past the center of the hall when Clara's injured hand shifted. A fresh bead of blood slipped from the cut in her palm and touched the thin crust of frost clinging to the iron tag at the wolf's neck. Silver light moved through the frozen film. Ronan stopped. As the frost shimmered, the faded crest beneath it became clear. His eyes locked on the shape. For a moment, the hall disappeared. He knew that crest. He knew the deep scratch across the lower edge of the tag. He had held that piece of iron in his hands as a child. Ronan looked down at the wolf, then at Clara. That belonged to my mother. Queen Elwyn Blackmoor had been dead for 19 years. By the time the physician closed the chamber doors, Clara had stopped shivering. Ronan found that more frightening than the shaking. 3 fires burned low rather than hot, and heated stones had been wrapped in wool and placed near her feet and beneath the blankets around her. The physician had ordered warmth slowly, not all at once. Clara's wet wedding dress had been replaced with a simple linen shift and heavy robes. Her injured left palm was cleaned and bandaged. Across the room, the white wolf pup slept in a basket near the hearth, its swollen paw wrapped with the strip Clara had torn from her gown. She needs rest, the physician said quietly, and time. Ronan stood beside the table where the royal archivist had laid out 2 documents. I need the truth first. The archivist slid the older parchment forward. This is the restoration entry you approved 2 years ago. Ronan did not need to read it twice. 12 ceremonial minutes, bride and Alpha together. His signature rested beneath the final line. Beside it lay the implementation copy used that evening. Until first light. The words had been inserted into a version carrying the same royal seal. The copy also bore the required chancellery authentication, but nothing on the page showed who had ordered the change or when it had been made. Ronan stared at his own seal. He had spent years believing that putting his name beneath an order made responsibility clear. Tonight his name had done the opposite. It had given cruelty the appearance of obedience. A faint movement came from the bed. Clara's eyes opened. Ronan crossed to her at once, then stopped before touching her. Water? She nodded. He poured it himself and held out the cup. Clara tried to take it with both hands, then winced when the bandage around her left palm tightened. Ronan steadied the cup without taking it away from her. Her gaze moved past him to the documents. You found it, the version I signed. And the one they used? He looked at her. Yes. Clara was quiet for a moment. Were they the same? No. The answer seemed to cost her something that anger might have made easier. Ronan pulled a chair closer, but did not sit until she gave the smallest nod. The rite I approved lasted 12 minutes, he said. We were supposed to stand outside together. Clara looked down at the cup. I saw your signature. I know. Garrick showed it to me when I asked if you had approved the trial. Ronan's jaw tightened. He could have told her he had been deceived. He could have explained that the council had no authority to change what he signed. Every sentence would have been true. None would have changed what happened. My seal put you outside that door. Clara looked at him directly. You didn't lock it. Ronan said nothing. But your name made everyone afraid to open it. The words struck harder because she did not raise her voice. He remembered the young servant trembling beside the bar, the nobles refusing to meet his eyes, the silver tokens filling the bowl. Clara was right. Ronan had built a court where people obeyed his authority, even when they believed the result was wrong. What do you want me to do? He asked. The question surprised her. Perhaps it surprised him too. Clara glanced toward the sleeping wolf, then back at the 2 decrees. Find out who changed what you signed. No punishment? Truth first. Ronan studied her. And after that, ask me when we know who actually deserves it. For the first time that night, something almost like life returned to her expression. Ronan felt the corner of his mouth threaten to move. The wolf pup stirred. Its one golden eye opened, and it struggled upright inside the basket. Clara immediately shifted beneath the blankets. Don't! Ronan's voice was sharper than he intended. She froze. He caught himself. The physician said you shouldn't stand yet. He paused. Do you want me to bring it to you? Clara watched him for a second, noticing the difference. Yes. Ronan lifted the basket and set it beside her. The pup pressed its nose against Clara's wrist. Beneath its neck, the old iron tag was still edged with frost that had not melted despite the warmth of the room. Ronan frowned. That should be gone by now. Clara reached toward it with her bandaged hand. Wait. She looked at him. Ronan stopped himself from reaching for her wrist. Does touching it hurt you? I don't know. Then you decide. Clara drew a slow breath and loosened the edge of the bandage just enough to expose the cut across her palm. A thin bead of blood touched the frost on the tag. Silver light moved through the frozen film. The room went silent. This time, the light did not vanish immediately. A woman's voice emerged, faint and broken, as though carried through a wall of ice. If anything happens to me. Ronan stopped breathing. He knew that voice. Clara's eyes lifted to his. The frost brightened once more. Seraphine knows why. Then the light died. Only the ordinary iron tag remained between them. Ronan stood motionless. Clara slowly covered her palm again. That was your mother. It was not a question. Ronan stared at the tag he had last seen when he was 15 years old. My mother died 19 years ago. Clara looked from the dead frost to the two conflicting decrees on the table. If she knew she was in danger, she said softly, why didn't anyone listen? Ronan had no answer. For the first time since Queen Elowyn's death, he was no longer certain it had been an accident. 2 days later, Clara could walk through the eastern corridor without the room tilting beneath her, though the physician had made her promise that walking was not the same thing as being recovered. Her left palm remained bandaged, and cold still returned to her fingers and feet without warning. Ronan noticed when she slowed, but said nothing unless she looked ready to fall. That restraint was new. The royal archive lay beneath the eastern wing of Blackmoor Keep. The white wolf pup remained asleep near Clara's hearth, its injured paw wrapped and warm. Clara had wanted to bring it until Ronan asked, "Do you want it with us, or do you want to know it is safe?" She had chosen safe. The elderly archivist unlocked a cabinet containing records from the final year of Queen Elowyn's life. Ronan stood beside Clara, rather than in front of her. "We stop if you're tired." Clara glanced at him. That sounded almost like a request. It was. Progress. A faint line appeared between his brows, but she caught the edge of amusement before he turned to the records. The first useful document was not magical. It was a stable ledger. 3 days before Queen Elowyn's death, her primary saddle had been removed from the royal stable for an unscheduled inspection. The entry gave no reason beyond routine maintenance. Clara traced the line without touching the page. Who requested it? The archivist produced the repair order. The handwriting belonged to a stable clerk long dead, but the legal receipt beneath it bore another name, Garrick Dane. Clara looked at Ronan. He was chancellor then? No, a junior legal clerk. The archivist nodded. He processed sealed household orders. Below Garrick's signature sat a short, handwritten instruction in darker ink. Return directly to Royal Tack Room. No secondary stable inspection. Clara read it twice. Was that normal? Not for royal riding equipment, the archivist said. A knock sounded. Garrick entered carrying 2 ledgers. I was told my name appeared in the old records. He set the books down. I processed hundreds of household orders when I was a clerk. If I signed that receipt, it means the paperwork passed through my desk. Clara pointed to the second line. And this? Garrick studied the notation. I wrote whatever instruction accompanied the sealed request. So you personally copied it? Yes, that was my duty. Whose instruction was it? 19 years ago? Garrick's expression remained controlled. I cannot honestly tell you. Garrick opened one ledger and showed them the duty roster from that month. His name appeared exactly where he said it would. Ronan did not accuse him. Leave the records. Garrick inclined his head. Of course. Before leaving, he added, Queen Elowyn requested a review of several seal records shortly before her death. If that survived, it may be in the judicial archive. After the door closed, Clara looked at Ronan. He just gave us another place to search. Yes. You trust him? No. Do you distrust him? Ronan looked at Garrick's old signature. Not enough. The judicial archive held Queen Elowyn's request. She had asked for an audit of several royal seal authorizations less than a week before she died. No accusation. No names. Only a request that certain orders be compared against their originals. Clara leaned back. The same problem. Copies that may not match what was authorized, Ronan said. The archivist then placed a frost-lined shard from Queen Elowyn's registered oath stone on black cloth. Clara's stomach tightened. Ronan saw it. We do not need to use it now. We might. That is not the same thing. He did not move toward her hand. Do you want to try? Clara breathed slowly, then nodded. Yes. The archivist documented the shard before Clara loosened the bandage around her palm. She touched one fresh edge of the cut to the frost. Cold shot through her arm. Silver lines spread through the ice. A broken image formed not a complete memory, only fragments. Leather, a silver buckle, a woman's hand pressing against a saddle strap. Then a sharp sound. Something snapping. Clara pulled away. The room tilted. Ronan moved instinctively, then stopped with his hand inches from her arm. Clara? She saw the question in the space between them. For the first time since the wedding, she did not feel managed. She reached out and placed her right hand in his. Ronan closed his fingers around hers, only enough to steady her. Nothing more. The dizziness passed slowly. He simply waited until her balance returned, letting her decide when to pull away. Neither let go immediately. Later that afternoon, an old stable master named Thomas Vale was brought to the archive. His hands shook with age, but his memory did not. Yes, he said after seeing the ledger. The Queen's saddle was taken out the night before her last ride. By whom? Ronan asked. I never saw. There was paperwork, so I let it go. Was anything wrong with it when it returned? Thomas hesitated. The strap looked newer. Clara straightened. Replaced? Part of it. I thought someone had repaired where? The fragment flashed through her mind. Leather. A buckle. A snap. Still not enough. But now the magic had something outside itself to stand beside. Clara looked again at the handwritten order beneath Garrick's signature. No secondary stable inspection. Someone had moved Queen Elowyn's saddle under valid paperwork and made sure the stable did not examine it afterward. 19 years later, someone had changed Clara's winter right beneath a valid royal seal. She looked at Ronan. The method is the same. His gaze settled on Garrick's old receipt. Not enough to accuse him. No, Clara said. Enough to keep looking. Inside the archive, Queen Elowyn's broken saddle had just become more than an old accident. By the next morning, the archive no longer felt like Ronan's investigation. It felt like theirs. Clara sat across from him at the long oak table, her left palm still bandaged, while ledgers, seal copies, and stable records formed careful stacks between them. Ronan had stopped moving documents out of her reach whenever she leaned too far. Clara had stopped pretending she was not tired when her fingers began to tremble. "Take 5 minutes," he said. That sounded like an order, a suggestion delivered with excellent authority. She looked up. Ronan's mouth almost moved. 5 minutes. Then we continue. Agreed. Agreement had begun to matter between them. The pattern from Queen Eloan's final days was clearer. Her saddle had left the stable under valid paperwork. She had requested a comparison between sealed orders and their originals. Then she died before the review was completed. Clara turned one copied authorization toward Ronan. Whoever did this didn't need to forge everything. No, only the part people obeyed. The same method had been used against her. A legitimate seal, a changed instruction, enough ceremony around it that no one questioned the order until someone was already in danger. Ronan's expression hardened. Clara touched his sleeve with her right hand. "Don't disappear into that face." "What face?" "The one where you decide anger is a strategy. I have won wars with this face, and nearly lost your wife to paperwork." That silenced him. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed once. Clara smiled before she could stop herself. A clerk arrived carrying a narrow evidence case recovered from an old storage room beneath the western tower. According to the inventory mark, it had belonged to Queen Eloan's household. Ronan reached for the brass latch. "Wait." Clara caught his wrist. A dark green residue marked the underside of the clasp. She bent closer without touching it. "Poiso." Ronan looked at her. "You're certain?" "I know the root. It's used in winter pest traps. In a cut, that amount could kill." Ronan slowly withdrew his hand. Clara released his wrist. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, he said, "You just saved my life. Try not to make a habit of needing it." His gaze stayed on her. "Clara." The way he said her name changed the air. They were standing very close. Ronan lifted one hand, then paused before touching her face. Again he waited. Clara did not step away. For one suspended second, she thought he might kiss her. A shout from the adjoining chamber shattered the moment. The royal archivist rushed in. "The oath stone." Ronan turned. "What happened?" "The registered shard from Queen Eloan's stone is gone." They crossed into the evidence room. The black cloth remained on the table. The ice shard did not. No window was open. No lock had been broken. Whoever entered had used authorized access. The access ledger showed 3 entries that morning: the archivist, a palace clerk, and a chancellery courier carrying authenticated records. Garrick's office. Clara stared at the line. Ronan did not jump to the conclusion. Not proof. Not yet. An hour later, Tomas Vale, the retired stable master, vanished from his guest chamber. A servant found his walking stick beside the rear passage and a note on the bed claiming he had invented his testimony after Clara promised him royal favor. The handwriting looked like Tomas's. The words did not. Then guards found a second item beneath Clara's cloak in the archive. A sliver of frost-covered stone. Not Queen Eloan's missing shard, but another piece cut to resemble it. Seraphine arrived before Clara finished examining it. Her gaze moved from the false shard to Clara. "What exactly are we looking at?" "A plant," Clara said. Seraphine's brows rose. Ronan stepped forward, but Clara spoke first. "Someone wants it to look as if I replaced the registered evidence. Or perhaps Her Majesty has been manufacturing these visions from the beginning." Ronan's voice dropped. "Careful." Clara looked at him. He stopped. She appreciated that more than if he had threatened the room. Seraphine continued, "A missing witness, a missing oath stone, false evidence among the Luna's possessions, and the king's judgment has become increasingly dependent on what only his new wife claims to see." I never asked anyone to accept a vision without corroboration, Clara said. No, you merely placed yourself at the center of every discovery. The accusations spread quickly. By evening, the Northern pack leaders demanded a royal tribunal before the scandal fractured the court. Ronan found Clara in the chamber where the white wolf pup slept beside the fire. Its injured paw was healing. Clara sat beside it, staring at the bandage around her own hand. There is another way, Ronan said. She looked up. A western passage leaves the keep below the old kitchens. I can have riders waiting beyond the forest. You want me to run? I want you alive. And if I leave? They will call it proof. Yes? Ronan's jaw tightened. I don't care what they call it. I do. He went still. Clara rose slowly. I spent my whole life trying not to be difficult. She looked toward the hall beyond the chamber walls, toward the people who had watched her walk into the snow and now wanted to decide whether her survival itself was suspicious. Let them find out how difficult the truth can be. The next morning, the doors of the royal tribunal opened. Ronan offered Clara his hand. She looked at it, then at him. This time, she took it not because she needed help standing. Together, they walked inside. The royal tribunal had never been built for comfort. 7 pack banners hung above the circular chamber. Nobles filled the galleries, and every leader who had dropped a winter token into the silver bowl on Clara's wedding night was there again. Clara felt their eyes as she entered beside Ronan. This time, no one laughed. At the center stood 2 places, one for the accused and one beneath the carved wolves of the crown. Ronan stopped before either. Seraphin Voss rose from the council bench. Garrick Dane sat 3 seats away, composed beside a stack of sealed documents. A senior pack lord cleared his throat. Before testimony begins, there is one matter the court must settle. Her Majesty stands accused of manipulating forbidden frost magic, compromising royal evidence, and influencing the Alpha King's judgment. His Majesty may preserve the crown's neutrality by withdrawing from her defense. Clara turned toward Ronan. If the king distances himself from the disputed evidence and allows the tribunal to judge Lady Clara independently, no claim need be made against the crown itself. There it was. A clean escape. Ronan could keep his authority untouched while Clara faced the accusations alone. Ronan looked at the throne-backed chair reserved for him. Then he removed the royal signet. A murmur moved through the chamber as he stepped past the royal seat and placed the signet on the stone table before the judges. Then hear her without fear of me. Seraphine's expression tightened. Ronan continued, his voice quiet enough that everyone leaned closer. And judge what was done in my name without protecting me from it. Until this tribunal ends, my signet stays here. I will issue no order in this matter, command no arrest, and claim no royal privilege over the evidence. The whispers grew louder. If this court finds that I altered evidence, suppressed truth, or used the crown to shield my wife from lawful judgment, I will surrender the crown. The chamber erupted. Ronan ignored it and looked at Clara. For the first time since their wedding, she understood the full cost. He was putting power down so she could be heard without it. Clara walked to the center of the chamber alone. Seraphine spoke first. Her Majesty claims to receive fragments from oath ice that no ordinary witness can see. Since those claims began, a registered shard has disappeared, a stable witness has vanished, and false evidence was found among her belongings. I did not place it there, Clara said. Of course not. Seraphine's tone remained calm. You ask this court to believe that every irregularity surrounding you is someone else's work. Clara held her gaze. No. I ask the court to examine the parts that do not depend on believing me. The royal archivist came forward with the 2 copies of the first winter rite. Clara pointed only to what mattered. The king signed 12 ceremonial minutes, bride and Alpha together. The archivist confirmed it. Clara indicated the implementation copy. This is the order used against me. Until first light, one judge read. And the king was not present. The archivist confirmed that too. Garrick rose. A discrepancy in implementation is serious. It does not prove conspiracy. No, Clara said. It proves the order enforced that night was not the order Ronan signed. She deliberately used his name rather than his title. The point was fact, not authority. Next came Queen Elowyn's iron tag, sealed inside an evidence case. The archivist verified where it had been found, and that frost associated with the registered oath record had been documented before activation. Clara repeated the fragment exactly. If anything happens to me, Seraphine knows why. Whispers spread through the galleries. Seraphine did not flinch. Queen Elowyn and I served on the same court for 15 years. She knew my name, she disagreed with me often. A dead woman saying I knew why she feared danger proves neither murder nor intent. Clara looked at the judges. She is right. That silenced the room. Ronan watched her closely. The fragment is a lead, Clara said. Not a verdict. The archivist entered the record of Thomas Vale's earlier testimony, along with the old ledger showing Queen Elowyn's saddle leaving the stable before her final ride. The paper trail bore Garrick's name from his years as a junior clerk, including the instruction that the saddle be returned directly without a secondary stable inspection. Garrick stood again. I processed the receipt and copied the instruction attached to it. That was my duty. No witness has testified that I touched the saddle. Also true, Clara said. Garrick's eyes narrowed slightly. They had expected a desperate woman claiming magic had shown her the truth. Instead, she showed them where the truth still had holes. A neutral pack witness examined the oath records, iron tag, and archive seals. He confirmed the materials were authentic, and that none of the known activations could establish guilt without corroborating evidence. The missing shard still weakened Clara's case. Thomas Vale was still gone. The false fragment found beneath Clara's cloak still existed. The archivist also entered the evidence room access packet. A chancellery courier had entered under an authorization personally countersigned by Garrick. Beneath the signature was a direct access instruction, waiving the secondary archive check. Routine emergency access, Garrick said. Clara looked at the line but did not answer. Not yet. Then the court permitted one final activation from the preserved frost on Queen Elowyn's registered record. Clara stepped toward the black stone table. Ronan remained where he was. He did not reach for her. Clara loosened the bandage around her left palm. The cut had begun to close, but one edge opened under pressure. A bead of blood touched the frost. Silver spread through the ice. The chamber held its breath. A woman's voice surfaced, faint and fractured. Seraphine. Then nothing. The light vanished. For one heartbeat, the entire court seemed ready to turn toward Lady Voss. Seraphine rose slowly. Her face was pale, but her voice remained steady. A dead queen speaking my name is not proof that I killed her. No one answered, because again, she was right. Clara looked at the ledgers, the saddle record, the altered right, Garrick's old receipt, and the empty place where Thomas should have been. The ice had given her a name. It had not given her the missing link. And if she could not find it, Ronan had just placed his crown at risk for a case she still could not prove. For several seconds, no one in the tribunal moved. Seraphine stood beside the council bench, composed now that the silver light had died. Garrick remained 3 seats away. Ronan stood beside the royal signet he had surrendered. Clara looked at the evidence. The altered winter rite, Queen Elowyn's iron tag, the stable ledger, Garrick's old receipt, Elowen's request to audit royal seal records. Tomas Vale's sworn statement. The ice had not failed her. She had been asking it to solve the case for her. No more activations, Clara said. Seraphine's mouth curved faintly. At last, some restraint. Clara asked the archivist to place Queen Elowen's stable record beside the implementation copy of the Winter Rite. 2 events, she said, 19 years apart. She pointed to the first. The Queen's saddle left the stable under valid paperwork. The receipt bears Garrick Dane's signature, and beneath it he personally copied an instruction that the saddle be returned directly to the royal tack room with no secondary stable inspection. Then the second. The rite Ronan signed required 12 minutes and both of us together. The version used against me changed that to until first light. Chancellor Dane personally authenticated the altered copy. Garrick rose. Authentication was my duty. Yes, Clara said. So was processing the saddle order when you were a clerk. Neither fact alone proves conspiracy. That answer stopped him. Clara turned to Seraphine. The public report says Queen Elowen fell during a mountain storm. Tomas testified only that part of her saddle looked newly repaired when it returned. Seraphine folded her hands. And? Nothing read aloud in this tribunal identifies what failed. Clara let the silence lengthen. Perhaps the silver buckle shattered. Seraphine answered too quickly. The buckle did not break. The leather below it did. The chamber went still. Across the table, Garrick turned toward her. Clara did not move. How do you know that? Seraphine's face lost color. The fragment showing the strap under pressure was witnessed only during the private investigation, Clara said. The archivist sealed that description. Tomas never identified the point of failure. The public report never mentioned a damaged strap. The archivist nodded. Correct. Clara looked at the judges. Seraphine knew a non-public detail about the sabotage. Garrick stood again. Even if that establishes her knowledge, it does not establish mine. Clara turned to him. No, your own bypasses do. She asked the archivist for the access packet from the morning Queen Elowen's registered shard disappeared. The courier who entered the evidence room carried an authorization from your office, Clara said. That has already been established. Read the instruction beneath your countersignature. The archivist did. Direct access. No secondary archive check. A murmur moved through the chamber. Clara placed it beside the 19-year-old saddle order. No secondary stable inspection. No secondary archive check. Then she placed the altered Winter Rite between them. In the old case, you personally copied an instruction that bypassed the one inspection most likely to discover the altered saddle. In my case, you personally authenticated a version that bypassed the order the king actually signed. When the oath evidence began connecting those events, you personally countersigned an access order that bypassed the normal evidence check. Garrick's expression changed for the first time. Clara continued, your office did not merely appear near these events. Your hand authorized the same kind of exception each time. He looked towards Seraphine. That glance showed fear. It was not a confession, and Clara did not need one. Queen Elowen had discovered irregularities in sealed orders and requested an audit. Before she could complete it, her saddle was moved under Garrick's paperwork, shielded from inspection, and returned altered. Seraphine knew a detail about the sabotage no outsider should have known. 19 years later, Clara's rite was changed beneath Ronan's seal and authenticated by Garrick. When Clara's blood exposed Elowen's warning, evidence disappeared through another exception he personally approved. The magic had supplied fragments. Clara supplied the chain. The judges questioned the archivist, compared the 3 authenticated bypasses, and reviewed Tomas's sworn statement. Ronan said nothing. He did not order an arrest. He did not rescue Clara from the silence. He trusted her to stand in it. When the judges returned, they found sufficient evidence to hold Seraphine and Garrick on charges of conspiracy, evidence tampering, and Queen Elowyn's death pending final judgment. Both lost access to council authority immediately. No one cheered. Clara was glad. This was not revenge. It was accounting. Then her eyes found the silver bowl. Bring me the winter tokens. Every face in the galleries changed. The bowl was carried into the center of the tribunal. On my wedding night, each of you put a token here to witness me entering the trial, Clara told the pack leaders. Take them back, one at a time. The first Alpha approached. What did you witness? Clara asked. I saw them remove your mantle. The second took his token. I saw the doors close. Another lowered his eyes. I knew you were still outside. Another said, I thought the king had ordered it. Clara held his gaze. And when you saw what it was doing to me? His hand closed around the token. I said nothing. One by one, the metallic clinks of her wedding night were undone. When the final token was removed, Clara faced Seraphine. No one should have to earn the right not to be harmed. By sunset, the corrupted winter rite was abolished and the archives opened for review. Ronan publicly accepted responsibility for allowing his seal to command obedience farther than his scrutiny. Then he made the cost permanent. He relinquished the crown's right to make royal marriage or ritual orders enforceable by his seal alone. From that day forward, his signature could begin such an order, but never complete it without independent verification. It was power his predecessors had kept for generations. Ronan gave it up because his wife had nearly died beneath it. But when the hall finally emptied, one decision remained beyond any court: their marriage. For the first time since the wedding, no crown, ritual, accusation, or danger stood between Clara and the answer. Only choice. The tribunal had emptied by the time Clara returned to the great hall. Only a few servants remained, gathering papers and extinguishing candles. By sunset, Seraphine and Garrick were under guard awaiting final judgment. The corrupted First Winter Rite had been abolished, and the royal archives had been opened for review. Ronan's surrender of soul seal authority over royal marriage and ritual orders had already been recorded. The kingdom would spend months dealing with what came next. Clara wanted one honest conversation. The white wolf pup slept near the hearth in a padded basket, its injured paw healing cleanly. When Clara passed, its one golden eye opened and its tail thumped once against the blanket. It would remain at Blackmoor Keep with her. Ronan stood near the same place where he had left her before the border summons on their wedding night. He was no longer wearing the royal signet. Without the council, guards, or throne behind him, he looked less like an Alpha King and more like the man who had noticed she had not eaten. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ronan said, You should be resting. Clara looked at him. He exhaled. That was badly phrased. Very. I meant to ask whether you are tired. I am. Do you want to leave? Clara glanced toward the great doors. Ronan seemed to realize how the question sounded. I don't mean the hall. Silence settled between them. Clara's injured left hand was still bandaged. Ronan continued. This marriage began as an agreement between houses. Then my court used my authority to hurt you before you had even spent one night here. Ronan, no. I need to say this without asking you to make it easier for me. She stopped. If you want the marriage ended, I will not fight you. If you want to leave Blackmoor, I will make certain no title, bond, counsel, or obligation keeps you here. I will not use the crown to keep you. The words should have relieved her. Instead, they hurt. For the first time in her life, someone was not asking her to stay by becoming smaller. He was giving her enough room to leave. And if I go? She asked. His jaw tightened. I let you. That is not what I asked. Something shifted in his expression. "If you go," he said quietly, "I will regret it." Clara waited. Every day. No command, no claim, only truth. Clara looked around the hall. On her wedding night, Seraphine had removed the fur mantle from her shoulders here. Pack leaders had dropped silver tokens into a bowl while Clara stood silent because she believed being difficult made people leave. She understood now that silence had never protected her. "I don't want the marriage they arranged," she said. Ronan went completely still. Clara stepped closer. "I want the one we choose." For several seconds, Ronan simply looked at her. "Clara, you told me not to make this easier for you." A breath of laughter escaped him. "I did, so don't ruin it." "I'll try." His hand lifted, then stopped between them. Even now, he waited. Clara placed her right hand in his. Ronan's fingers closed around hers. Warm, careful, chosen. His eyes moved toward the empty floor. "You still owe me something." Clara raised a brow. "After everything, you are collecting debts?" One, understanding, reached her. "Do I still get my dance?" Clara remembered the promise from before the winter tokens and the locked door. "One no one else gets." She stepped into the open space between the tables. "You get one. There is no music. You're an Alpha King. Improvise. I command armies. I do not improvise music." "Then this will be humbling." Ronan drew her gently closer. They danced anyway. No nobles watched. No council judged her. No ritual decided whether she deserved to stand beside him. The only sounds were the dying fires, their footsteps across stone, and the winter wind beyond the doors. When the dance ended, neither immediately let go. Eventually, they walked toward the entrance together. The great oak doors stood open to the evening air. Clara stopped at the threshold. Outside lay the courtyard where Ronan had found her in the snow. The hedge was still bent where she had crawled beneath it to reach the wolf. Ronan stood beside her. He did not take her arm. He did not lift her. He did not tell her which way to go. On her wedding night, he had carried her through these doors because she could not walk. Now he waited. Clara looked at the threshold once. Then she stepped across it on her own. Ronan followed only after she chose the way. For most of her life, Clara had believed love was something she could keep by asking for less. That winter, she learned something better. The right love did not ask her to disappear in order to stay.